I am Ian Kraft. I'm 24 years old. I work in communications. I love to hike. I love to be outside. Back when I was in second grade, back in about 2002, I started having a lot of pain, and I was diagnosed with what they called indeterminate colitis. So they really didn't know if I was at Crohn's or colitis. And I spent the next, 20-something years of my life really trying to get through figuring out if it was Crohn's or colitis, and we went from doctor to doctor. And then about a year ago, actually 1 year ago on this day, believe it or not, I perforated in 4 spots, was sent to the hospital, and that night they said, yes, 100%, you have colitis. I ended up in the hospital because of some of the most extreme pain that I had felt as a colitis patient in February of last year. And I spent 2 weeks there kind of struggling to move. I lost about 40 pounds. I couldn't eat. I couldn't really even lift my head up off the hospital bed. And so it really is a year to this day. This morning I woke up a year ago last year and I had an ostomy bag. I was awake. I was alive. I was in ICU. I couldn't really breathe on my own. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't walk, but I was alive. And they were able to remove part of my intestines and gave me a ileostomy, and now I am able to function really as a normal human being who just has the prosthetic, the ostomy bag, on my front right side. So I fought as hard as I could. I worked with PT as hard as I could. Through the grace of God and so many doctors and nurses, I pushed my way through, and April last year I broke through the hospital doors, and here I am now. So Crohn's and colitis, as physical as a disease that they are, one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is the mental, emotional side of what the disease kind of does to a patient. And when you're in the hospital for 2 months, you see another side of mentally and emotionally of yourself. You think that going through this mentally would weaken you, but overall mentally, going through this and making it through the other end has mentally toughened me more than anything I've seen ever. Now there's really nothing that I'm afraid of anymore, because when you've gone through the ringer and come out the other side, you realize that you are incredibly strong now. Emotionally, I became stronger. Mentally, I became stronger. And as many of the downsides that this explosion brought on, as far as emotional and mental growth, I couldn't have asked for anything more. I'm open with this disease because it truly is invisible. If I didn't have an ostomy, and even with an ostomy, there's not a whole lot of times that you can really tell that I'm a patient with this disease. I try to stay active, and I think that being visible about this disease is so important because it tells people that, yeah, someone probably has it, and they just, you can't really tell because they're kicking butt and living a normal life. I think that kids with this disease, when you get diagnosed with this disease as an 8-year-old, you are having to learn how to push through giving a presentation on polar bears to your class while your stomach is in so much pain and you're trying not to shake and quiver in front of your class. You're having to decide whether or not to go to a friend's house knowing that, you're gonna bleed while you're there. Do you hide that? Do you stay at home? Do you push through it? As an adult, you have to, go through interviews and days at the job where maybe you can't sit through this meeting with this client, but you're gonna have to. People with Crohn's and people with colitis, especially kids with Crohn's and colitis who may be bullied because they're smaller and more frail than a lot. You may be smaller and more frail on the outside, but on the inside, you're the strongest people on this planet. You're some of the strongest people that you know. You go through more pain, more diligence, and more inner strength during the day that anyone around you really has to. And the stuff that you go through is something that a lot of people couldn't really even imagine. Take Steps was something that I signed up for several months before I went to the hospital. And I saw it as a way to bring visibility to the disease and show my support for all the members of the community who had it. I walked the full 2K of the walk at about 103 pounds, but you know what? I made it from the starting point to the finishing points. And Take Steps was an awesome thing, not just because of the awareness it brought to the community, the money it raised for the community, the people who got to see this disease in action and the survivors that were brought together. But if it did not just give me an opportunity to actually get myself in walking form and fighting form, I beat colitis and I'm still beating it. And it really gave me that kick butt opportunity to walk through that finish line and walk through that gate with my hands raised high, saying, yeah, I kicked butts and everybody here can do it too.